Hey people, what's up? Hart here. Today I'm going to show you how to make a hypnotic sleepy beat like something you would hear on the Lo-Fi Sleep playlist. We're only going to be using Ableton stock instruments and effects for this one, and on the surface this beat is going to look really simple. I think there's maybe only 4 or 5 tracks in total, but I'm going to show you how to use some of Ableton's more powerful built-in effects like Echo and Hybrid Reverb to make your beat more interesting. So without further ado, let's hop on into Ableton. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is take our tempo down. So normally we start at 120, so we're going to take it down, keep going, stop. About 55, that is probably pretty good, which is going to seem really slow, but it's perfect for sleepy beats. So let's go ahead and start with Wavetable. I'm going to show you how to make like the most basic keys or pad patch you've ever seen in your life, but it's going to work perfectly for this. So chill pad, I want to start with close to a sine wave. So let's go ahead and drag that up so it's somewhere between a sine and a triangle. So we just have a couple extra harmonics there, just gives it a little bit more life. And I'm going to come over here to the filter section and drag this back. And we're going to open up this one as well and drag this one in. So this is kind of like a band pass here. So we have a low pass and a high pass. And I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of resonance here. And I'm pretty much going to leave this amplitude envelope the way it is. I'm just going to drag the sustain up just a little bit. And that is it for now. Let's go ahead and add some chords. So I'm going to be in B minor today. And I'm going to start with the B minor chord, which is the 1 chord. So we're going to do every other note here. And this is a B minor 9 chord. And we're going to come down here, and the second chord, the only other chord we're going to play, is the 4 chord. So this is going to be an E minor 9 as well. So let's go ahead and see. What I want to do here is match some of these notes up. So these ones are going to be dropped down a little bit, and these ones will match up. So there's our E minor 9 chord. So the entire song, we're basically just going to go back and forth between these 2 chords. So we have our 1 chord and our 4 chord. And what this is going to do when this goes back and forth like this is kind of going to give you this kind of unresolved feeling, and it's going to just make it really nice and kind of give it that hypnotic feeling. All right, one thing I forgot I do want to do for this pad is just add a little bit of unison. So I'm going to come to classic here. 3 voices is fine. I'm just going to drag the amount down just to a little bit. That sounds pretty good. Go ahead and add some EQ as well. So I'm just going to add a high shelf to kind of damp some of those higher frequencies. Just make it sound a little bit more lo-fi. And these lower kind of tones here are a little bit much, so I'm just going to damp those down a little bit as well. All right, so next we're going to add what I'm going to call a ghost sidechain. And basically this is just a MIDI track that you're not actually going to hear the sound from, but it's going to act as a trigger for a sidechain compressor. So you're getting that ducking effect from the sidechain without actually hearing the sound that's creating the trigger. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to add a MIDI track and I'll show you. All right, so let's go ahead and add that MIDI track, and we're going to rename it to Ghost Sidechain because being organized is cool. All right, so I'm just going to add an empty MIDI clip here. And so basically you can kind of choose however you want your sidechain effect to occur. So you can pick any note you want here because we're not actually going to hear the note that's being played. But for this one, I want quarter notes. So I want that ducking effect to happen every quarter note. So I'm going to put a MIDI note on every quarter note here. And I'm just going to tighten this up here just because it's probably going to work better if it's just a shorter signal coming in. And speaking of which, next you can pick any sound you want, but typically a shorter sound, maybe something like this, will work best than a long sustained note. So I'll put that on there. And next you want to come over here to the channel output and change it from master to sends only. And what that's going to do is send the actual sound from this track to the sends. So it's not actually going through the master track, so you're not going to hear it. So you can see that purple there showing that there is a signal going through, but we can't actually hear it. So let's go ahead and put a sidechain compressor on our pad at the top here, change it to sidechain, and our input is going to be from that ghost sidechain we just created. So you can see that signal, and we can affect our pad just like that. So we get that nice kind of hypnotic, like undulating effect. Pretty cool. All right, next let's add some drums. So I have a drum rack here set up with some simple sounds. I've got a kick, this percussion sound, got a lo-fi type snare, and this hi-hat. All right, so I'm just doing a really simple pattern here. So a hi-hat every 8th note, snare every 2 and 4, and kick is basically just the beginning of every beat. All right, that hi-hat is a little long, so I'm just gonna pull this sample in a little bit here. Just kind of make it like a little tick like that. You know, maybe a little bit longer. Nah, shorter's better. All right, now for this percussion, what I want to do is try and actually get it in time or in tempo with the song. And I'm going to do that by transposing the pitch down because that will actually slow the sample down. So let me show you real quick. If I put this in here, what I have in my head is I want this perk to kind of lead into the snare. So I'm going to put it right here. And if we play this through, it's too fast. All right, so if we come back down here to the simpler, I'm going to change this from one shot to classic. And I'm going to come into the control section here. And we can affect the transposition, which is basically the pitch of the sample. And as we take it down, it's going to get slower and slower. So what I want to do is basically work with this until it's basically in time with the song. All right, so after playing around with this for a while, I'm going to say about -9. Sounds like it's about in time. That's pretty good. So let's go ahead and EQ this. So I'm just going to add a high shelf on here to damp those highs. Just kind of keeps it that nice muffled lo-fi effect. And a reverb on here as well. All right, next we're going to start having some fun here. So let's go ahead and add our melody. So I'm going to use Ableton's electric instrument, which is basically kind of like a create your own electric piano sound. And I'm just going to use, there's a lot of really nice ones in here. I'm going to use this one, so I'm going to drop that on the track. So this was a simple melody I came up with. It's basically an arpeggiated B minor 9 chord. It's an octave higher than the pad, and just slightly different notes. So let's see how that sounds with the rest of the track so far. So it sounds pretty nice. The thing is, it sounds pretty boring too. So let's grab some effects. All right, so I've got an EQ, an echo, and a hybrid reverb, which I'm going to turn off for now. So let's zoom in on this echo. I'm going to unsync the times and do it about 1/16 and 1/8. Change this from dotted to just straight notes. And then sounds like that so far. And I'm going to turn the feedback up just a little bit. And basically what that does is increases the amount of echoes you're going to hear. So that sounds pretty nice. Let's turn up this reverb as well, which basically adds some reverb to the echoes. And a cool thing you can do is change this where it says post to feedback. So basically the reverb is going to be fed back into the feedback as well. And be really careful when you're doing this because this can spiral out of control, like into like deafening levels very quickly. So just kind of inch these like little bits. Let's turn up the decay here. Change it to ping pong mode. And I'm going to dial back the dry wet just a little bit so we're kind of mixing the dry signal with this a little bit more. Okay, that sounds pretty nice. Let's come into the character section and let's check out this wobble effect. And basically this will kind of wobble the pitch of the echoes, which that's a lot. So let's just dial it back a little bit. And the morph here is actually going to modulate the amount as well. So it's going to give it just a nice kind of organic variation. Okay, so that already sounds really nice. Next, let's slide on over here to this hybrid reverb. And basically what I want to do is turn serial off, and I'm not going to use the convolution section. I'm just going to use the algorithmic portion so that is turned off. And we're just going to use this section down here for the algorithm. So I'm going to change it from dark hall to shimmer, which is a really nice setting. And you can hear what that's doing with the shimmer. It's adding some really, really nice shimmery top end. So let me change some of these settings real quick and we'll get to the fun part. All right, so basically I just changed the size a little bit. I'm going to dial back this dry wet so it's a little bit more subtle. And the fun part that we want to look at here is this freeze section. So basically we have this arrow, which is what's going to feed your sound into the reverb, and this little asterisk, which is what freezes the reverb. So you can create some really, really nice lush ambience pads with this, but make sure that that arrow is on if you want new sounds to be fed into the reverb as it's frozen. So basically what I'm doing here is I want to basically freeze and unfreeze this to match with my melody and kind of create this kind of lush ambience in between the spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and automate that. So let's click on that. I'm going to hit the A button to open up my automation window. So if we come up here, I'm going to automate the on-off on that freeze. So right about here, the last note, I want to turn it on. And maybe have it turn off here just so it's not muddying up the next phrase. So that looks good. And you can come over here so you can actually see your automation in a new lane. That way it's much easier to just duplicate your automation itself, because I want the same exact automation. So now we have that nice kind of sustained reverb. You can just see that freeze coming on and off just to catch those notes. And Hybrid Reverb also has an EQ here that you can see. And again, we're going to do that high shelf. Everything gets a high shelf. And then if you want to get really fancy, you can come here to the dry wet and you can automate that as well. So maybe we want to do something like this at the end just to make the end of the phrase a little bit more fun. So let's go ahead and automate that. If you hold Alt, you get that fun little curve that you can add in there. So let's just automate the dry wet at the end there. It's going to create a nice little swell before it goes back to the beginning. Gorgeous. Gorgeous and super simple. All right, and to match the simplest pad you've ever seen in your life, we now also have the simplest bass you've ever seen in your life. So I am just using the operator preset, the guitar bass. Sounds pretty nice, really simple. And all I'm going to do is draw in a MIDI clip here, and we're just going to follow the root notes of the chords. So we have that B right there and the E. The question is this too low? Let's see. Sounds like it can handle it. So let's hit legato just to get that the length of the bar. It's super simple. Let's also grab that sidechain compressor we used on the Wavetable, and I'm just going to literally copy it and take it back down to the bass track, paste it, so that same sidechain is there. Just make sure it's not making any weird clicks or pops. Sounds good, so now that bass is kind of breathing along with the rest of the track. All right, lastly, we always need just a little bit of noise or some grit in the background if we're doing like a lo-fi type beat. So we can actually use Echo to do this by itself. So let me show you. All right, so let's go ahead and pop an Echo on an empty MIDI track. And I'm just going to turn the feedback all the way to 0, dry wet all the way to 100%. Come into the character section, turn on the noise, and we'll turn the amount up. Whoa, that got hot real fast. Let's turn it back down. And basically you can get anything from like really white noise to kind of a nice vinyl crackle using this morph. That sounds pretty nice. And of course we want to EQ this just a little bit. Now y'all thought I was going to use a high shelf, didn't you? All right, let's change that morph just a little bit. Kind of dial in the sound you want. It's kind of fun. And then you can turn on wobble as well and just kind of get some nice organic movement. That's not organic, that's too much. Let's turn that down. But you can do that, turn off the morph, just kind of play around with it, and you can make some nice background noise for your beats. Cool. All right, so here's a really simple arrangement I threw together. Like I said, for sleepy beats, usually simple is fine. This one is meant to just kind of go back and forth and kind of give you that hypnotic feeling before bed. The only thing I added was this kind of counter melody with this jazz guitar, which is also an Ableton instrument. And I did the same thing as I did with the electric melody and just kind of added this echo and the hybrid reverb down here just to kind of space it out and make it a little bit more lush. But that's pretty much it for this video. I'll play the entire beat for you. If you learned something, if you enjoyed, please remember, hit that like button, leave me a comment. I really appreciate it and it helps my channel. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.